Hey guys, um, today I want to talk about my favorite character, George Soros. He's a Hungarian-born manipulator of almost everything you can imagine. What he does is one thing that he does is he funds rebels in other countries such as Libya and Syria. And what he does is he hires them to rile up the people so that they hack the government. And then when the government fires back because they're being attacked, the narrative is he's killing his own people. Let me walk you through this with, I guess I'll use Syria as the example. So what happened was the United States armed, funded, and trained these rebels along with other Western countries. And then they were sent into Syria to get the people all riled up about the government. And a certain number of people go at the rebels and they go attack the government. Media silence when that happens. Nothing said at all. Government's being attacked. Then, when the government fires back, that's when they attack. That's when the media starts talking. He's killing his own people. Something must be done, etc. And George Soros is involved in a lot of different things, but the biggest thing he's involved in is manipulating wars and rigging elections in a lot of different countries, including the United States. At least he tried to rig the election to Hillary, but as he probably knows, it doesn't matter who wins. But there were these Soros machines that were turning Trump votes into Hillary votes in Texas, I believe. So, not a good person. He's done a lot of other stuff too, but he has this foundation charity that he uses to fund all his little games that he plays and experiments that he runs and whatnot. And another manipulated war was Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. That war was easily the most obvious manipulated war. And the way that they killed Saddam Hussein, well, the jury's still out on that, whether or not they actually killed him, because his wife said that's not him, that's his double. So, who knows? Either way, they supposedly stuck a metal rod up his you know what. That's how they killed him. So it's pretty sick, the things that they'll do to these demonized dictators. And they're doing the same thing to Russia right now, demonizing Russia because they want a manipulated World War III. If you look back in history, all the world wars were manipulated. Pearl Harbor, the Japanese were manipulated into attacking Pearl Harbor. World War I was manipulated. And every time a world war ended, there was more concentration of power in fewer hands. That's just how it works. And it's a shame because people don't see it. In the next World War, the Third World War, you could argue is already happening. The United States' war of terror, killing innocent civilians all over the world. But the actual World War III is going to be, if we allow it to happen, Russia, China, Iran, a few other countries against NATO. And demonization of Russia has been very critical to this happening. Russia did this. Russia hacked the election. Russia put a nerve agent on an ex-Russian spy. Russia did this. I burnt my toast. It's the Russians. I'm late for work. It's the Russians. You know? And it seems like Vladimir Putin, who is not a Sunday school teacher, but he is being the most mature of any of these leaders when it comes to knowing what the game is and how things are manipulated. I'm not saying he's perfect, which he's definitely not. There is no perfect leader in this world. He can be quite ruthless, yes, but so can most other leaders. I mean, but he knows what the game is, and that's why he's helping Syria. And if it wasn't for Russia, Syria would literally be controlled by ISIS. Now, what is ISIS? ISIS was funded partially by George Soros and the West, trained by the West, and what they did was they invade countries to give the United States an excuse to go in there and get rid of them. And they're like Al Qaeda 2.0, basically. Al Qaeda was created by the West in the 1970s to give Russia their Vietnam and Afghanistan and whatever war that was that Russia fought against Afghanistan. It ended up being a quagmire, I guess. And Osama bin Laden was head of the Mujahideen, and Al Qaeda stood for the database, which was the database of Mujahideen fighters. And these wars are almost every war is manipulated because war is good, not just for business, it's good for the fear that people generate. Like I said before, war is like a banquet to these 6 psychopaths and the other demiurge and the archontic force. So, and people, they feed off this fear, these entities. And wars are good for reducing the population, which is, we are not overpopulated. The problem is it's badly managed. We badly manage our populations. There's plenty of room for enough people, but supposedly everybody could live in Alaska. You know, every person could have a decent sized house in Alaska. But, you know, and there'd be enough room for every single family, I guess, to have a home. But, you know, it's just a matter of finding better. I mean, we have concentrations of populations in certain spots like New York City, London. Uh, India is a really overpopulated country. And the problem is that there are too many people in certain countries. That's all. And there are other countries that are pretty spread out. And there are states in America that are pretty spread out. I mean, but of course, in all the documents, population reduction is in almost every single one of all these elites. So they do want to get rid of a lot of us. But I mean, I think it's mostly due to they hate humans for the most part. They see us as lesser than them. These hybrid bloodlines, these elite bloodlines, as they think they are. Um, but anyway, manipulated wars are a great way to get rid of a good number of people, especially a world war. And that's another way that they manipulate us. I say if we all just took our power back and stopped letting small amounts of bureaucrats and elected officials dictate our lives and stop believing everything that we're told in the press and the media, it's a very good possibility that we wouldn't be in this predicament and that we could get out of it. But we just need more people to wake up and see through the program and stop watching the damn news, because that is one of the biggest programming machines in the world, run by 5 or 6 companies total, TV and print news. Can you imagine how 5 or 6 corporations are going to tell us how a war is going? And they're all connected at the top anyway, at the pyramid, the big pyramid. So, I mean, it's easy to manipulate a war because all our information we get, except in the rare alternative media sites, like ones that don't actually just copy what the mainstream media is saying, we've got basically the same story, the same ideas floating around, which is, in a way, sort of like inbreeding information, I guess. And it's all copy and paste. There's a great clip on YouTube, something about Easter, I think, where it shows like, I believe it's at least 20 or 30 different, maybe 50. I can't remember how many local newscasts saying the exact same line about Easter. And it's a good example of how even local news are full of repeaters and they just read what they're told to read. They're not doing that much investigative journalism either. Although I would prefer the local news over the cable news networks, because at least they do sometimes talk about something that's actually relevant to your life. But when it comes to wars and this and that, they're not gonna do anything but toe the other media line. But just be aware that almost every single war that's ever happened in this last century, and probably ever, was manipulated in some way into happening. Because only governments want war. People don't want war. What's the best case scenario for a person fighting a war? To go back to the exact same place unharmed. There's literally no reason, unless, of course, you're one of those psychopaths who loves killing people. Then I say join the army, but then again, I say don't, because there's already enough needless bloodshed in this world, so try to get help. but that's what it seems like. The entire world run by military interests and manipulation through people like George Soros, um, Brzezinski. I can't pronounce his first name. He's dead now anyway. And others like those people. George Bush Sr. committed genocide down in South America. I mean, Israeli-Palestinian thing where Israel is now it's really on display. Israel is killing people with impunity now that Trump's in office. And America continues to support Israel. And when you become a congressman or congresswoman, you have to sign the AIPAC clause saying you'll always defend Israel. Why is that? Rothschild. That's the reason why. So we just got to be streetwise when it comes to wars and conflicts and ask ourselves this one question: who benefits? Who benefits from us believing this story? Like the gun control I said yesterday in the wars. Who benefits are arms industries, people who want to see people die, people who get off on this shit, sick people who run, a lot of them who run our country, and just don't fall for it anymore. It would be great if we never had another war, never had another conflict. And I think once we reach the right consciousness as a humanity, as human beings, I think we can actually stop the wars. Because I mean, we just need to get ourselves into the oneness principle and the love principle and the knowing that we're all connected. And it doesn't make sense to smash yourself in the head with a shovel, does it? Because that's what you're doing when you attack someone else. If you believe in the concept of oneness or subjective reality, or if we all took that perspective, and I know people in the East, like in Japan and some people in China, they see the world in that way as a dream, of illusion, and that we're only fighting ourselves when we fight others and whatnot. We all have that consciousness. There'd be no more war. But for whatever reason, they keep happening because manipulation in different ways. Lying, making up stories, bending the truth, creating fake events like 9/11, not fake events, but staged events like 9/11, lying about weapons of mass destruction, lying, not telling the truth about he's killing his own people when they're actually defending themselves, etc., etc. And these wars would not happen. But I recommend checking out the Project for the New American Century. It's a document released in 2000 by Dick Cheney, a bunch of other people, neocons, and said they wanted to attack 7 countries in 5 years, and that this process would be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. In 1 year to the month after that document was written, we had what George W. Bush called the Pearl Harbor of our century. So just remember that the wars we fight are never for the reasons that we're told, and the things that happen, for the most part, are not how they're reported in the media. Always do your own research, be aware, be streetwise, and never join the army or the military, because you'll end up being a pawn in a game you don't understand. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you. Thank you.